Gabriella Raines had exactly 5 minutes to get to her interview, or risk losing the one shot she had at turning her life around, until a speeding black car hit a puddle and drenched her in muddy water from head to toe. She froze, soaked and stunned, standing on the edge of West 59th Street, her blouse clinging to her skin, her skirt dripping, her tote bag ruined. A pair of polished black leather shoes appeared in front of her. "I'm so sorry." "Are you okay?" came a voice, low, smooth, and unapologetically expensive. Gabriella looked up, ready to unleash hell, and stopped cold. The man standing in front of her was tall, sharply dressed in a navy wool coat and tailored suit, his dark hair tousled by the wind, and his amber-brown eyes wide with concern. He looked like he walked out of a magazine spread, or a boardroom, or both. "You," she started, her voice catching. "You were driving that car?" "No, but I own it," he said, pulling out a crisp white handkerchief and offering it to her. "My driver took the turn too fast. I'm Quinn Navarro." "You think a handkerchief is gonna fix this?" she asked, waving her soaked arm. "I have an interview in 5 minutes." He looked her over, not in a creepy way, in a very calculating, very intense way. "Get in. I'll take you." Gabriella blinked. "Get in your car with a stranger? I just ruined your day. It's the least I can do." "And you can call someone while we drive," he paused. "Actually, no, don't call, just trust me, I'll get you there." "No offense, but you don't look like someone used to being told no." Quinn actually smiled for the first time. "That's true. But you should still say it if that's what you want." Gabriella hesitated. Her phone was dead, her clothes were a mess, she had no time. And honestly, she didn't have options either, she sighed. "Fine, but if you're secretly a serial killer, I'm not. I'm a venture capitalist." "Same thing," he laughed, opening the back door of the car. The leather interior looked untouched and smelled like new money. As soon as she slid in, the heat hit her skin and she groaned softly. "Your name?" he asked, getting in beside her. "Gabriella Raines." "Gabriella," he repeated like he was trying it on. "What's the interview for?" "Assistant project coordinator at Radcliffe and Moss." He nodded and tapped the partition. "Take us to Radcliffe and Moss." "Fast." As the car pulled back into traffic, Gabriella tried to pat her skirt dry with the handkerchief, which was now ruined. She glanced sideways. "You know they're not going to take me seriously like this." Quinn pulled out his phone, made a quick call, and said, "Have someone meet me at Radcliffe and Moss with a clean outfit, women's, size 6, business professional, neutral colors." Gabriella's eyes widened. Did you just buy me clothes? You said they won't take you seriously. That's not acceptable to me. You don't even know me." "I don't have to know you to want to make this right." She stared at him, confused. "Why are you being nice?" He met her gaze. "Because I can." The car stopped in front of a tall glass building. As promised, a woman in a black suit was waiting at the curb with a garment bag. "This is insane," Gabriella muttered as Quinn handed her the bag. "Go get that job," he said. "And if they don't hire you, let me know." "I'll figure something out." She paused. "You serious?" Completely. Gabriella didn't know what to say. She just nodded, lips parted, and ran into the building. She got the job, and for the rest of the day she couldn't stop thinking about Quinn Navarro. She didn't even know why. He was just some rich guy who felt guilty. Right. Except 2 days later he showed up again. She was grabbing a coffee downstairs from her office when she heard that same voice. "Gabriella." She turned and saw him standing there, holding out a coffee cup like it wasn't strange at all that he'd found her. How did you know where?" "I have connections, and I owed you a coffee." "This is weird, is it?" "A little." "Then let's make it weirder," he said, handing her the cup. "Have dinner with me," she laughed. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I don't even know you." "Then get to know me." She stared at him. He wasn't just attractive. He had that kind of presence that made everything else fade. And for some reason, even though every red flag in her brain screamed caution, her heart whispered, "Say yes." "Fine," she said. "One dinner," he grinned. "Tonight, 7. I'll send a car." "You really don't hear the word no, do you?" "I heard you say yes." That night, the car arrived right on time. Gabriella stepped out in a black dress she hadn't worn in years and heels that made her regret every step. But when she saw the restaurant, her mouth dropped. It was a rooftop, private, glowing with candlelight and overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Quinn stood waiting, hands in his pockets, watching her like she was the only thing that existed in the city. "You rented out the rooftop?" she asked. "Bought it," he said casually. "I hated the view from the restaurant I used to take people to." "You're kidding." "I'm not." As they sat down, Gabriella couldn't stop staring, not at the view, at him. "Why me?" she asked. Quinn leaned in, his voice low. "Because you didn't fall at my feet. Because you looked me in the eye and told me off. Because you're the only person I've met in a long time who didn't care who I was." "I still don't know who you are." He tilted his head. "I'm Quinn Navarro. I built my first startup at 22, sold it for $30 million. I now own a venture firm. I invest in people who chase impossible things. And now you're chasing me," he smiled. "I don't chase, but for you I'll make an exception." Gabriella's heart thudded. She didn't want to like him, but she already did. And as they clinked glasses under the stars, she couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, getting splashed by that car had been the best thing that ever happened to her. Gabriella didn't expect to see Quinn again after their rooftop dinner. But 3 days later, he appeared on the sidewalk outside her office like he belonged there, leaning against a sleek silver car that definitely didn't belong to anyone making a mid-level salary. "You're following me now?" she asked, stepping out of the revolving doors, her arms full of architectural renderings she'd stayed late organizing. Quinn reached for the stack without asking and tucked them neatly under one arm. "You mentioned in passing you worked late on Thursdays. I thought I'd walk you home. I never said where I live." "You didn't," he agreed. "So I figured I'd start with walking you to the subway." Gabriella narrowed her eyes. "You're not the type that takes the subway?" "No, but I am the type who learns quickly." "I looked up how to buy a Metro card." She didn't laugh. Not because it wasn't funny, but because she couldn't quite decide what game he was playing, if it was one. "This isn't normal." "What part? You showing up like this whole thing?" "I don't date guys who buy buildings for the view." Quinn didn't blink. "Then don't think of it as a date. Think of it as a walk with someone who wants to know what your favorite flavor of ice cream is." She stared at him for a beat, then turned. "It's pistachio." He fell into step beside her. "That's unexpected. You asked." They walked down the street, the late evening bustle of the city wrapping around them. Gabriella stayed quiet. It was easier than asking the dozen questions swarming her head. "You're quieter than usual," Quinn said after a few blocks. "I'm not used to this, walking, being noticed. Outside of work, I'm usually invisible." He looked over at her, his brow creasing. "That's impossible. It's true." "You're the kind of person people remember, Gabriella. You don't even know me." He stopped walking. "Then tell me something that'll change that." She turned to face him. "My mother left when I was 12. My dad raised me working night shifts at a freight yard. I got my degree on scholarship, and I've never had anything handed to me." "Does that change it?" Quinn's expression didn't shift, but something in his eyes did. "Yes." She hadn't meant to say any of that, but now that it was out, she didn't want to take it back. He gestured toward a small park. "Let's sit." Gabriella followed him to a bench near the fountain. The air was cool, the wind tugging gently at her loose curls. She watched him settle beside her, his coat brushing her sleeve. "You think I don't understand struggle," he said, not looking at her. She didn't answer. "My father ran a repair shop in Queens. Taught me how to rebuild a carburetor before I could ride a bike. I lost him when I was 19. He didn't leave me money. He left me a toolbox." Gabriella turned slightly. "And now you're a millionaire." It wasn't a straight line. "I made a lot of bad decisions, burned out twice. Missed birthdays, ruined relationships." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you think this is a game. It's not. You barely know me. I know you came to this city to build something. I know you work harder than the people above you. And I know you don't trust easily." Gabriella looked down at her hands. "Trust is expensive." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Then let me earn it." She wasn't used to men like him saying things like that, saying anything real if she was honest. "You want to prove something?" she asked after a beat. "Yes." "Then stop showing up with fancy things and start showing up real," he straightened, meeting her eyes. "Done." They sat in silence for a while. The city hummed around them, and for once it didn't feel overwhelming. "I have a friend's gallery opening tomorrow," Quinn said eventually. "It's not black tie, no press, just wine, bad lighting, and overpriced abstract art. Come with me." She hesitated. "Are you asking me or hiring me?" "I don't want anything from you except your company." Gabriella stood slowly. "I'll think about it. I'll pick you up at 7. "You're assuming I'll say yes," he smiled, but it didn't feel practiced. "I'm hoping." She walked away without confirming either way. But the next night at 6:45, she was standing in front of her building in a navy dress she hadn't worn since graduation, clutching a coat that didn't match, and her nerves balanced in her heels. Quinn didn't arrive in a car this time. He walked up the street on foot, hands in his pockets, wearing a charcoal jacket over a dark green shirt, no driver in sight. "You're early," she said as he approached. "So are you." They walked together to the gallery, nestled between a bakery and a bookstore. Inside, the walls were lined with strange geometric canvases and people who spoke in metaphors. "This is terrible," Gabriella whispered as they passed a piece that looked like someone had spilled paint and framed the result. "It's the artist's most expensive piece," Quinn replied. "Of course it is." He handed her a glass of red wine and nodded toward a quieter corner. "Escape plan?" "Yes, please." They found a spot by the window, the muted city lights flickering through the glass. Gabriella caught him watching her as she sipped her wine. "What?" she asked. "You wear nerves well." "I'm not nervous, you are, but it doesn't make you smaller, it makes you sharper." She felt her breath catch. No one had ever said anything like that to her. "Why are you really here, Quinn?" He didn't hesitate. "Because the moment I saw you on that sidewalk, I knew you were going to matter." Gabriella stared at him, her heart thudding harder than it should. This wasn't a game, not anymore, and that terrified her more than anything. Gabriella stood frozen in the back hallway of the gallery, her hands pressed against the cool marble ledge beneath the window. The city lights outside blinked faintly, but her focus was on the slow, deliberate footsteps approaching behind her. "I didn't mean to overwhelm you," Quinn said quietly. She turned, not startled but wary. "You didn't. You walked out mid-conversation. I needed air." He stepped closer, but not too close. "You're not used to people meaning what they say." Gabriella folded her arms. "I'm used to people wanting something. I want dinner with you." "That's it. You already had dinner with me. Then I want another." She looked up at him, the corner of her mouth twitching. "You ever hear of pacing? I've never been good at waiting." She studied him for a long moment. "You're different when it's quiet." "How so?" "You're not performing." He leaned back against the wall, one hand sliding into his pocket. "That's because I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to understand you. What makes you think I'm something to figure out? Because you're still holding back." She didn't respond right away. "Then, what happens if I stop?" "Then I'll finally see you." Gabriella's breath caught, but she masked it by brushing a stray curl behind her ear. "You're still too polished." Quinn tilted his head. "You want messy, I want real. I've got a family brunch tomorrow. It's chaotic, loud. My sister will interrogate you, my nephew will spill juice on your shoes, and someone will probably bring up politics." She blinked. "Why would you invite me to that?" "Because it's the most honest part of my life, and you asked for real." Gabriella hesitated. "You're not afraid I'll say something inappropriate?" "I'm counting on it." She exhaled through a laugh she didn't mean to let out. "Fine. But if I hate it, I'm leaving." "You won't." The brunch, held in a restored brownstone tucked behind a row of ivy-draped fences in Brooklyn Heights, was everything Quinn had promised and worse. The door had barely closed behind them before a petite woman with bold eyebrows and a commanding voice cornered Gabriella in the entrance hall. "You're the one he canceled a board meeting for?" she asked, already leading Gabriella toward the kitchen. "Sophia," Quinn warned. "No, it's fine." Gabriella said, navigating the cluttered hallway with ease. I like knowing what people think up front. Sophia looked over her shoulder. Then you'll fit in just fine. The dining room was a storm of overlapping voices, mismatched chairs, and half-finished fruit platters. Gabriella found herself squeezed between a 7-year-old with chocolate on his chin and Quinn's uncle, who seemed to think she was his long-lost neighbor's daughter. At one point, someone passed her a pitcher of lemonade and the handle snapped clean off. The liquid splashed onto her lap and Quinn's hand immediately reached for a stack of napkins, his expression unreadable. I'm fine, she said quickly, blotting at her skirt. I can get you something to change into, Sophia offered from across the table. I said I'm fine. Quinn leaned closer. You want to leave? Gabriella shook her head. No, I want dessert. Is there pie? That earned an approving laugh from Quinn's grandfather, who hadn't spoken all morning. Later, away from the chaos, she stood in the backyard under a string of dim patio lights, arms crossed against the breeze. Quinn approached with 2 mugs. Your skirt's only slightly stained. I feel like I've been through a war. You handled it better than half my exes. She raised an eyebrow. How many are we talking? Fewer than you think, more than I wish. She took the mug from him. They all come to brunch, just one once. Gabriella sipped. And? She left halfway through, claimed she had a meeting. It was Sunday. She smiled into her mug. I survived. You did more than that. She turned toward him. Why does it matter to you that I fit in with your family? Because they're the only people I trust to tell me when I'm being an idiot. And what would they say about you right now? That I'm on the edge of something dangerous. Her eyes narrowed. Dangerous how? Because I care more than I should for someone I barely know. Gabriella didn't move. You think saying that makes this easier? No, I think saying it means I'm not hiding it. She stared at him, the words catching in her chest before she could stop them. I don't have space for something that ends badly. He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. Then let's not let it end, her pulse jumped. You sound like someone who's never been left. I've been left plenty of times. I just stopped believing it had to be the ending. She hated how much that made sense, hated how calm he was about it, how sure. I'm not some prize you win, she said. I know, and I'm not going to turn into someone who just fits into your life. I don't want you to. She looked away, taking a slow breath. This doesn't feel safe. It's not supposed to. When she looked back at him, something had shifted, not in him, in her. I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking for promises. She took another step toward him, the mug still warm in her hands. But I am curious. Quinn smiled, not the practiced one, not the charming one, the real one, the one that made her chest ache. Then let's find out what happens next. Gabriella's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she stepped through the gleaming glass doors of the Midtown Tower. The receptionist barely looked up. Quinn had already cleared her with security. She wasn't here for coffee this time, or dinner, or another strange, dazzling gesture. She was here because, for the first time in her life, she was ready to stop running from something that might actually be good. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a painting, but Gabriella's attention zeroed in on the man leaning against the desk, sleeves rolled up, tie undone, eyes already on her. You came, Quinn said softly. You said to come when I was ready, she answered. I think I am. He pushed away from the desk but didn't rush her. What changed? I stopped trying to figure out what you were getting out of this, she said, and started asking myself what I wanted. His gaze sharpened. And I want to stop pretending like this isn't real. Quinn crossed the room slowly. You think I haven't been waiting for you to say that? Gabriella looked up at him, not flinching this time. No games, no more guessing. I haven't been playing games, Gabriella. She stepped closer. Then tell me what this is. It's me, he said, his voice low and steady. Falling in love with you, her breath hitched. Say it again. He didn't hesitate. I'm in love with you, she didn't blink. Then prove it. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Not a ring, not jewelry. Inside it was a single silver key. She frowned. What's this? To the gallery, the rooftop one. You said you bought it. I did, but I had the paperwork rewritten. It's in your name now. Her stomach dropped. You can't just— I can, he said, and I did. Because that night changed everything for me. I want you to have a place in this city that's yours, not borrowed, yours. She stared at him, stunned. You bought me a building. I gave you a place to dream. Her hand closed around the key slowly as if it might vanish. You don't even know if this will work. I'm not afraid of that. I am. I know. She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. You scare me. I scare myself when I'm around you. He moved closer, brushing her cheek with the backs of his fingers. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. Her heart cracked open. Not from pain, but from the sheer force of what she felt. She reached for his face, pulling him down into the kiss that had been waiting since the first moment their eyes met beneath that stormy sky. It wasn't slow, it wasn't careful, it was everything. When they finally pulled apart, Gabriella leaned her forehead against his. So what now? He grinned. Now I take you somewhere. I'm not dressed for wherever your idea of somewhere is. You won't need to be. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers as if he'd always known how they would fit. An hour later, she was barefoot on a private beach, the Atlantic breeze twisting through her hair. The sand was soft beneath their feet, and the evening sun was slipping behind the water in a blaze of gold. This is your property, isn't it? She asked. He nodded. One of them? She turned to face him. You brought me here so I'd say yes. No, Quinn said. I brought you here because this is where I realized I wanted a life that wasn't just mine. I want to share it with someone who sees all of it. The noise, the silence, the mess. And still chooses to stay. She swallowed hard. You think I'm ready for all this? I think you always were. You just didn't have anyone who saw it. Gabriella looked out over the water, the breeze brushing against her skin. She'd spent her whole life building walls, fighting to be seen without being vulnerable, strong without being soft. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to choose. She turned, her voice steady. I love you, Quinn. He didn't move, he didn't speak. He just looked at her like she was the only thing that had ever made sense. Then he reached into the pocket of his linen pants and pulled out a folded piece of paper. What's that? She asked. He handed it to her. It was a deed. The gallery rooftop, her name. She traced the letters with her fingertip. You weren't bluffing. I never bluff with you, she looked up. I don't need a building. You deserve to own something no one can take from you. I already do, she said, stepping into his arms. You? His mouth found hers again, slower this time, reverent. The waves crashed behind them, and for the first time in Gabriella's life, the future didn't feel like something she had to survive. It felt like something she got to choose, and she chose him. Gabriella stood at the edge of the rehearsal space on the 30th floor of a converted warehouse in Tribeca. Her palms slightly damp as she watched an interior crew adjust the lighting for the gallery's upcoming relaunch. A month ago, she'd never imagined her name would be on the deed of anything, let alone a space that now housed rotating installations from up-and-coming artists, her selections, her vision, her rules. You ever stop moving? Quinn asked, stepping out of the elevator behind her. She turned, catching the soft rasp of his voice before she felt his presence at her back. I'm adjusting to the idea that I have something to protect now, she said without turning fully. It feels fragile. Like if I stop for too long, it might all disappear. He walked up beside her, his blazer slung casually over one shoulder, no tie, hair slightly tousled from the wind outside. It won't disappear. You didn't get lucky, Gabriella. You made this happen. She finally faced him, her expression softer than it had been all week. You still planning to give me a pep talk every time I doubt myself? No. Eventually, I'll just remind you of the time you out-negotiated 3 corporate sponsors in 10 minutes without blinking. That was different. I was furious. Exactly. That's when you're at your most terrifying, she laughed, letting it ease some of the tension in her shoulders. I have a meeting downstairs with a sculptor who thinks he's the second coming of Rodin. If he tries to argue about the floor space again, I may actually bite him. I'll keep bail money ready, she tilted her head. You're still showing up for everything, meetings, setups, even the food tasting. Don't you have a global empire to run? I delegated, he said simply. To who? To people who aren't in love with you. They can be trusted to focus. The words landed like a weight she hadn't realized she was waiting to carry. She didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. Instead, she stepped forward and slid her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. He held her without question. Nothing about their life made sense on paper. But it did in moments like this when the noise faded, and it was just them, shoulder to shoulder, dream to dream. Later that evening, she stood beside Quinn at a long wooden table inside a restaurant tucked beneath a bookshop in Nolita. The event was small, just friends, a few colleagues, and more than one confused artist trying to figure out how she'd ended up dating a man who could buy half the city. "I think they expect you to give a speech," Gabriella whispered as the last round of appetizers was cleared. "I didn't plan one," she raised an eyebrow. "You, Mr. Prepared?" "I was hoping you'd do it," he said. "It's your gallery, your night." She hesitated, then stood, lifting her glass. Everyone turned. "I'm not good at speeches," she began, "but I'm good at telling the truth. A few months ago, I was drowning in rent, ambition, and self-doubt. I didn't think people like me got moments like this, spaces like this. But tonight, I'm standing here because someone believed in me before I believed in myself." Her eyes met Quinn's. "And because I finally realized I didn't have to do everything alone." A quiet clink of glasses followed. No applause, just warmth. Real warmth. After the dinner, they walked back to the car slowly, the city humming around them. She leaned into his side, heels in one hand, a paper bag of leftover lemon cake in the other. "I have something for you," he said once they were inside the car. "I don't need anything else. It's not about need." He handed her a folded envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a signed agreement. Her name beside his, listed as co-founder of a new foundation, one dedicated to funding creative women from underrepresented backgrounds. She blinked at the words. "You did this, we did. I just filled out the paperwork." Her throat tightened. "You keep giving me pieces of your world. No, I'm giving you the world we're building together." She turned to him, her voice raspy. "You're not afraid I'll leave one day?" "No," he said, "because I know you won't." "How?" "Because you've already stayed through the hard part. Loving me is the easy part." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I don't want a perfect future, Quinn. I just want one where we keep choosing each other." "Then that's what we'll have." He leaned in, kissed her slow, and everything else faded. Weeks passed. The gallery's opening night was a storm of motion press, guests, cameras, artists nervously fidgeting near their work. Gabriella moved through it with the kind of quiet authority that made people step aside without being asked. Quinn stayed near the back, watching her. Not because he needed to keep an eye on anything, but because he couldn't look away. At the end of the night, after the last guest left and the lights dimmed, she found him by the window, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She took one. "You survived. I thrive in chaos." She leaned against the glass, gazing out at the skyline. "I used to think love was a distraction. Something that took you off course. And now I know it's the reason you keep going, even when everything else feels impossible." He looked at her, then set his glass down slowly. "Marry me." Her heart stopped. "What? I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this. But I've never been more certain of anything." She stared at him, breath shallow. He stepped closer. "I don't want a ceremony next week or a 5-tier cake. I just want you, every day, in every way." She didn't answer. She just threw her arms around his neck and kissed him like the rest of her life had already begun. They married in late spring barefoot on the same private beach where they'd first said everything that mattered. It wasn't grand, but it was perfect. Sophia cried. Quinn's nephew dropped the rings in the sand. Gabriella laughed so hard she almost forgot to say, "I do." But she did, and he did. And nothing, not the past, not the fear, not the years they'd spent believing they had to do it all alone, could touch the life they built from that moment on. Not because it was flawless, but because it was theirs. Fully, finally, and forever.